"Will you be my fake wife for a week?" That's what he asked her. A complete stranger. No introduction. No smile. Just those words. Quiet, desperate, and impossible to ignore. Because behind them was a secret. A dying mother's wish. And a man who had everything. Except time. Before we begin this story, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. All right, let's go back to where it all started. A quiet cafe on a rainy afternoon. A spilled cup of coffee. A man named Adrian Knight. And the woman who changed his life forever. Sometimes life asks us to do the unthinkable. To cross the line between what's real and what's pretend. He never believed in love. Not the movie kind, not the fairy tale kind. Not even the quiet, everyday kind. To him, love was messy, unreliable, a distraction from logic and purpose. But that day, everything changed. It started with a spilled cup of coffee and a stranger's nervous apology. She didn't know who he was, and he didn't expect her to matter. Yet only hours later, that same man would look into her eyes and ask a question no stranger should ever ask. "Will you be my wife for 1 week?" He wasn't joking. It wasn't a pickup line. It was a desperate request from a man who had everything except time. Because somewhere in a quiet hospital room, his mother, the only person who ever truly knew him, was dying. And her last wish was to see her son happily married before she closed her eyes forever. So, what do you do when a stranger asks you to play his wife? Not for love, not for money, but for a dying woman's final smile? This is the story of Adrian Knight and Lily Hart, a man who built walls so high that even love couldn't climb them, and a woman who stumbled into his life and quietly taught him how to feel again. What began as a lie would soon become the truest thing either of them had ever known. Let's begin with the deal that changed everything. Adrian Knight had always lived in control. Every detail of his life was carefully measured. Every decision planned like one of the blueprints his company was built on. Success, efficiency, order, that was his world. But all of that meant nothing when he got the call from the hospital. His mother's voice, once strong and full of warmth, was fading. The doctors had said she didn't have much time left. And in those last conversations, she spoke of only one wish: to see her son married, happy, and not alone when she left him. He had smiled then, said she shouldn't worry. But deep down, he knew he had no one, not even a name to pretend with. Days later, in a quiet cafe downtown, Adrian sat with his phone in hand, lost in thought. That's when it happened. A flash of movement, a gasp, and a cup of hot coffee spilled across his expensive suit. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." The woman's voice was small, rushed, almost trembling. She tried to dab the stain with napkins, her face red with embarrassment. "It's fine," he said flatly, though his tone was more startled than angry. He looked up, meeting a pair of sky-blue eyes, soft, sincere, full of apology. She smiled awkwardly, muttered another sorry, and hurried off to the counter. Her name was Lily Hart. He didn't know that yet, but something about her lingered in his mind longer than he expected. The warmth in her eyes, maybe, or the way she seemed to carry the weight of the world with a hopeful heart. He stayed a little longer than usual that day, pretending to scroll through emails. That's when he overheard her talking quietly to the barista. Something about rent, about overdue bills, about how she'd take on any freelance job just to keep going. A strange thought took root in Adrian's mind. Something absurd, impulsive, and unlike him entirely. Later that evening, he found himself back at the cafe. She was still there, cleaning brushes at a corner table, surrounded by small canvases and the faint smell of paint. "Miss Hart," he began, surprising even himself with how steady his voice sounded. "I need to ask you something unusual." She blinked, confused. "You know my name?" He nodded. "It was on your receipt." "I'm sorry if this sounds strange, but I have a proposition for you." Her brows knitted together. "Proposition?" "My mother is dying," he said simply. "Her last wish is to see me married. I can't give her that truth, but maybe I can give her the illusion of it. I need someone to play the part, just for a week." The silence between them was heavy. Lily stared at him, unsure if this was some cruel joke. "You want me to pretend to be your wife?" she finally asked. "Yes," he said. "I'll compensate you for your time. Enough to take care of your debts and give you a fresh start. You'd be helping an old woman leave this world happy." She shook her head, letting out a nervous laugh. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied softly. "You're honest, kind, the sort of person my mother would believe in." For a long moment, Lily didn't speak. She looked down at her paint-stained hands, then at the man across from her, polished, unreadable, and yet strangely sincere. "I don't know," she whispered. "It feels wrong." "Maybe it is," Adrian said quietly. "But sometimes doing the wrong thing for the right reason is the only choice we have." She met his eyes again, searching for something, truth, maybe, or compassion. And in that moment, she saw a man not made of money or control, but of fear and love for the one person he couldn't save. The next morning, she stood outside the night mansion, clutching the strap of her worn-out bag. She took a deep breath. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she murmured. The grand doors opened, and Adrian stepped out, dressed in black, his usual calm hiding something almost fragile. "Ready?" he asked. She gave a small, uncertain smile. "As I'll ever be." And with that, they walked inside, two strangers bound by a lie, one that was about to change both their lives forever. The night mansion stood at the edge of the hills, quiet and vast, like a memory carved in stone. Its walls were lined with portraits and history, but there was no warmth, no laughter, just the echo of footsteps and the ticking of clocks. When Lily walked through those doors for the first time, she felt like she had stepped into another world. Everything gleamed. The marble floors, the grand staircase, the golden light streaming through tall windows. And yet it felt cold, beautiful, but lonely. Adrian walked beside her, his expression unreadable. "We'll keep it simple," he said. "You don't have to act like someone you're not. Just be kind to her." Lily nodded, clutching her small purse. Her heart pounded. She wasn't an actress. She was a painter, a dreamer, someone who spilled coffee on strangers. How could she possibly pretend to be a wife? Then, down the hall, a soft voice called out, fragile but full of joy. "Adrian." Margaret Knight appeared in a wheelchair, a blanket wrapped around her legs, her eyes shining with light despite the illness in her body. And when she saw Lily, she gasped, hand over her heart. "So it's true," she said with a trembling smile. "You finally brought her home." Adrian hesitated, just for a moment, then gently placed his hand on Lily's shoulder. "Mom, this is Lily. My wife." Lily smiled, the words catching in her throat. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Knight." "Margaret," she corrected softly. "Your family now." That single word, family, hung in the air like something sacred. From that moment, everything began to move too fast. The staff congratulated them. The house came alive with chatter, flowers, and laughter. Margaret insisted on showing Lily old photo albums. And every time Adrian looked at his mother's joy, a quiet relief softened his usually guarded face. But when the doors closed and the rooms went still, the truth between them returned like a shadow. At dinner, Lily nearly spilled her drink, trying to remember which fork to use. Adrian's lips curved into a small, unexpected smile. "Relax," he whispered. "You're doing fine." She looked at him, almost amused. "You're actually smiling." Didn't think that was allowed. He glanced down at his plate. "I do occasionally, just not often enough to be caught." They shared their first real laugh that night. It was small, unplanned, but it lingered. In the days that followed, Lily's warmth began to fill the spaces money never could. She spent afternoons painting with Margaret in the garden, listening to her stories about Adrian as a boy, how he used to build castles out of pillows and draw houses in the dirt. Lily found herself laughing with Margaret, sharing tea, brushing her hair, listening to her speak about love with a wistfulness that made her chest ache. Adrian would watch from the study doorway, silent. He saw something he hadn't seen in years, his mother's joy, and in Lily's laughter, something inside him began to thaw. At night, they crossed paths in the hallway. Sometimes he'd find her sitting by the window, sketchbook in hand. "Can't sleep?" he'd ask. "Too many thoughts," she'd say softly. Your house has too many echoes. He paused beside her once, looking out at the stars. It's quieter than I'd like, he admitted. Always has been. She turned to him, smiling faintly. Then maybe it's time someone changed that. For the first time, he didn't look away. It was supposed to be pretend, just a week of kindness for his mother's sake. But as the days passed, the line between duty and feeling blurred. He found himself noticing the little things. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way her laughter softened every room she entered. And Lily, she saw something beneath his calm. A man who had spent so long being strong. He had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. By the end of the week's third day, Margaret smiled at them from her bed, watching as Adrian and Lily shared quiet conversation on the balcony. You too, she said, her voice faint but playful. You remind me of your father and me, always pretending we weren't in love until it was too late to hide it. Lily's face turned pink. Adrian's gaze flickered toward the horizon, unsure how to answer. But Margaret just smiled knowingly, closing her eyes. Pretend or not, she whispered, it looks real enough to me. And in that moment, for the first time since the deal began, Adrian didn't know if his mother was wrong. The week moved slower now, softer, like time itself was hesitant to leave. Each morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the night mansion, catching the dust in golden streams. Lily would hum quietly as she arranged flowers in the dining room. Adrian would watch from the doorway, pretending to read his phone, but really just watching her. Somehow, her presence made the house feel alive again. The halls no longer echoed with silence. Margaret laughed more. Even the staff seemed lighter. And for Adrian, who had spent years keeping emotions locked away, it felt both foreign and familiar. One evening, Lily found him in the garden, standing beside the fountain his father once built. He looked almost peaceful, lost in thought. You don't talk about him much, she said softly. Adrian's gaze didn't move. There's not much to say. He died when I was 15. I spent the next decade trying to be the man he wanted me to be, and somewhere along the way, I stopped being anyone else. Lily stepped closer, the faint scent of paint still clinging to her hands. You're not your father's shadow, Adrian. He turned toward her, a faint, tired smile on his lips. No, I'm my own cage. Neither spoke for a while. The sound of water filled the silence between them, gentle and steady. Then she smiled, small but real. You know, she said, for someone pretending to be my husband, you're doing a terrible job at smiling back. He chuckled softly, the sound surprising even himself. And for someone pretending to be my wife, you're awfully good at reading me. That was how it began. The blur between what was real and what wasn't. They started sharing breakfast together, laughing over burnt toast. He teased her for being clumsy. She teased him for being too serious. When she painted, he'd quietly stand nearby, offering silent company. When he worked late, she'd bring him coffee and sit across the room sketching in her notebook. It wasn't part of the deal. It wasn't scripted. It just happened. One night, Margaret insisted on a family dinner. You two never have time for each other, she said with a mischievous smile. So tonight, you dance. No excuses. The dining room glowed under soft golden light. Music played low from an old record player. Lily looked at Adrian, half laughing, half panicked. I don't dance. He extended his hand. Neither do I. Let's make a disaster of it together. She hesitated, then took his hand. His touch was steady, warm. As they moved slowly across the floor, the air seemed to still around them. They stumbled once, laughed, then found a rhythm. Simple, quiet, unspoken. For a moment, the world disappeared. It wasn't a lie anymore. It wasn't pretend. It was two people breathing in sync, forgetting where the act ended. When the music faded, neither of them let go right away. Lily looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to keep pretending for her, you know. Adrian's eyes met hers. Who says I'm pretending? Her heart skipped. She pulled her hand away, flustered, smiling awkwardly to hide the way her pulse raced. Good night, Adrian. He watched her leave the room, and for the first time in years, he didn't know how to feel. Later, He found himself lying awake, thinking about her laugh, the way her head tilted when she smiled, the paint smudges on her fingers. And he wondered, how did something so false start to feel so painfully true? Outside, Lily sat by her bedroom window, looking at the moon, heart tangled between guilt and something deeper. She had promised herself this was temporary, just a favor for a dying woman. But every time Adrian looked at her like that, she wasn't so sure anymore. By the end of the week, neither of them could say where the lies stopped and love began. The act had become their reality. And somewhere between the laughter, the late-night talks, and the quiet glances, they both knew something had changed forever. The house grew quieter as the days passed. The echo of laughter that once filled its halls now faded into distant memory. Margaret's energy dimmed a little more each morning, like the slow flicker of a candle fighting to stay alive. Her room became the heart of the mansion. Soft light through drawn curtains, the scent of fresh lilies that Lily changed daily, and the gentle hum of a clock that seemed to tick slower now. Lily spent her mornings by Margaret's bedside, reading aloud from her favorite books, brushing her hair with gentle hands, painting tiny flowers on her nails, soft blues and pinks, because Margaret said they made her feel a little bit like spring. Sometimes they'd just sit in silence, watching the golden afternoon light spill across the floor. And sometimes Margaret would smile at Lily, that knowing, motherly smile, as if she were looking at someone she'd known her whole life. Then one quiet afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the air turned warm and still, Margaret spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Lily, may I ask you something?" Lily looked up from the book in her lap. "Of course." Margaret's eyes were calm. "Clear. Too clear. This marriage of yours, it isn't real, is it?" Lily froze. Her heart caught in her throat. "I?" Margaret smiled faintly, saving her the trouble. "I've been a mother too long not to see the truth." The room went still. Even the air felt heavy. "But don't look so frightened, dear," Margaret continued softly. "You've given me more joy these past few days than I've had in years. You made my son smile again. You made this house feel alive." Tears blurred Lily's vision. "I never meant to lie to you," she whispered. "I just wanted you to be happy." Margaret squeezed her hand, frail fingers trembling slightly. "You did. You truly did. And for that, I'll always be grateful." She paused, her gaze drifting toward the window where sunlight shimmered through lace curtains. "Promise me something, Lily." "Anything," Lily said, wiping her tears. "When I'm gone, don't let him shut himself away again. He deserves love, even if he doesn't believe it yet." Lily could only nod, words tangled in the lump in her throat. Margaret smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You remind me of his father. He used to say that love was the only thing worth building. Everything else is temporary." That night, Margaret passed quietly in her sleep. No pain, no fear, just a peaceful sigh and stillness. The world seemed to hold its breath. Adrian was the one who found her. He didn't make a sound at first, just stood there, staring. Disbelief etched across his face. The woman who had been his heart, his compass, his only family, was gone. He didn't cry. Not right away. He just sat beside her bed, holding her cold hand in his, as if refusing to let go. Lily stood at the doorway, unable to move. She wanted to go to him, to hold him, to tell him he wasn't alone. But something in his stillness stopped her. He looked like a man made of glass. One touch and he'd shatter. Later, when she finally stepped closer, he turned away, voice sharp but breaking. "Don't," he said quietly. "Please don't." "Adrian," she whispered. "I know," he cut her off. "And I can't do this right now." His words weren't cruel, but they cut like knives anyway. In the days that followed, the mansion became a place of ghosts. Condolences came and went. Flowers filled the halls, their scent heavy and suffocating. The staff whispered softly, moving like shadows. And Adrian, he buried himself in silence. Lily stayed, helping where she could, arranging things for the funeral, writing thank you notes to people she didn't know. But Adrian avoided her completely. When she passed him in the corridor, he would look through her, not at her. At night, she could hear him in his study, pacing, glass breaking, doors closing too hard. He was unraveling, and she didn't know how to reach him anymore. One evening, she found herself standing outside his study door. Her hand hovered near the handle, her heart pounding. She wanted to knock, to tell him she understood, but before she could, she heard him inside, whispering to himself. "I promised her I'd be happy," he murmured, "and I couldn't even give her that." Something inside Lily cracked. She turned away, leaning against the wall, tears spilling silently. The funeral came. A sea of black suits, white roses, polite words that meant nothing. Adrian stood like a statue, stoic, unflinching. The perfect sun holding his composure. But Lily could see it, the storm underneath. The way his hands trembled when no one was looking. The way his eyes stayed fixed on the casket long after it was lowered into the earth. That night, after everyone had gone, she found him in the garden. The same garden where they had laughed and shared secrets. He stood by the fountain, staring at the reflection of the moon in the water. She approached quietly. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "You don't have to." "Yes," she whispered. "I do." He stood still, shoulders tense. "Your mother knew," Lily said after a long pause. "About us, about the marriage." That made him turn. Slowly. His eyes were tired, hollow. "She knew?" Lily nodded. "And she still thanked me. She said you deserved love, real love." He gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "Real love? There was nothing real about this, Lily. It was a deal, a lie built on pity." Her voice cracked. "That's not fair." He looked at her then, his grief spilling into anger. "You think I don't see it? The way you looked at her? The way you looked at me? You felt sorry for us. That's all this was." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You're wrong. I didn't do this out of pity. I did it because she deserved peace, and because somewhere along the way She stopped herself, shaking her head. "Never mind." He turned away, voice low. "You should go, Lily." She hesitated, searching his face for something. Anything. Left of the man who once smiled with her under the stars. But there was nothing. Just the cold shell of someone trying not to break. Finally, she nodded. "Goodbye, Adrian." He didn't look back. As she walked down the path, the gravel crunched beneath her shoes, each step echoing in the stillness. The mansion loomed behind her, dark, silent, and hollow once more. She reached the gate and turned for one last glance. The windows glowed faintly in the distance, but to her, it no longer felt like a home. The lie had ended. The truth had surfaced. And in its wake, both of them were left standing in the ruins of something that could have been real. From his balcony, Adrian watched her go, her small figure fading into the night. He wanted to call out, to stop her, to tell her that she mattered, but the words wouldn't come. Grief held his throat like a vice. He had lost his mother, and in pushing Lily away, he had lost something else entirely. Something fragile, something beautiful, something real. But by the time he realized it, she was already gone. And in the silence that followed, Adrian Knight, the man who had once built everything, finally learned what it meant to lose the one thing he couldn't rebuild. The days that followed Margaret's funeral bled together like watercolor on wet paper. Soft edges, muted colors, and no clear beginning or end. Adrian's world felt stripped bare. The mansion that once glowed with his mother's laughter was now hollow. Her perfume lingered faintly in the halls. Her teacup still sat by the window, as if waiting for a conversation that would never come. He filled his hours with work, long meetings, sleepless nights. It was easier to bury himself in numbers and face the ache inside him. But no matter how hard he tried to drown it out, every quiet moment led back to her, Lily. The sound of her laugh, the way her eyes softened when she looked at his mother, the warmth she left behind, like sunlight that refused to fade. He had told himself it was just grief, that what he missed wasn't her. It was the illusion they created. But that lie crumbled a little more every day. One evening, he found himself standing in the garden where they'd once danced. The same fountain murmured quietly. The same roses she tended swayed in the wind. He closed his eyes, remembering the way her hand had fit into his. He could almost hear her voice, gentle, teasing, alive. And suddenly he knew he couldn't keep living inside the echo of something that had felt so real. The next morning, he left the mansion. No destination, no plan, just the pull of something unexplainable. The road stretched ahead, winding through the city and beyond it, until buildings gave way to open sky. Hours later, he saw her. Lily sat by the riverside, surrounded by paints and unfinished canvases. Her blonde hair danced in the breeze, her dress speckled with color. She was painting the horizon, soft blues and golds bleeding together, like a promise of something gentle. For a moment, he just watched her, the quiet focus in her expression, the way the sunlight touched her skin. He felt it then, the ache of everything he'd lost, and the hope that maybe it wasn't too late. He took a slow breath and stepped forward. She looked up, startled at first, then still. Her brush froze midair. "Adrian," she said quietly. He nodded. "Hey!" Lily blinked, uncertain whether to smile or cry. "What are you doing here?" "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I just drove, and somehow I ended up here." She studied him for a moment. He looked different, softer, more human than she remembered. The sharp edges of the businessman were still there, but dulled by something fragile, grief, maybe, or love. "You look tired," she said. He smiled faintly. "I am. I haven't slept well since you left." "Adrian." He took a step closer. "I need to tell you something. And I don't expect anything from you. I just need you to hear it." She set her brush down, her heartbeat quickening. "Okay." He drew in a slow breath. "I asked you to be my wife for a week. I thought it was just a favor, a way to comfort my mother. But every day with you, it stopped feeling like an act. The laughter, the quiet talks, the way you made her smile, it all became real." He hesitated, his voice breaking slightly. "And when she was gone, I panicked. I told myself it was all pretend, because the truth was too terrifying. The truth was, I'd fallen in love with you." Lily's breath caught. She looked away, trying to steady herself. "Adrian, don't." "No, listen," he said, stepping closer. "You were right that night. I've spent my life building walls, around my work, around my heart. I thought that's how you stayed safe. But you," he gave a quiet laugh, "you walked straight through them, without even trying." Her eyes filled with tears. "You think words can just fix everything?" "No," he said softly. "But maybe they can start something new." For a long moment, neither spoke. The river whispered beside them, carrying the sound of the wind. Then Adrian reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small box, plain, wore at the edges, nothing extravagant. He opened it slowly. Inside was a simple ring, silver, elegant, timeless. "I don't need a fake wife anymore," he said. "I don't need a contract or a reason. I just need you." Lily's tears finally fell. "You didn't have to buy love, Adrian." He smiled, that rare, soft smile she remembered. "I know. I just had to feel it." He knelt before her, the breeze tugging at his hair. "Lily Hart," he said quietly, "will you marry me? Not for a week. Not for my mother. For me. For us." She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "You can't just show up here after everything and..." He looked up at her, eyes shining. "And what? Tell the truth? I should have done that a long time ago." She laughed through her tears, shaking her head. "You really don't know when to give up, do you?" "Not on you," he said simply. The river shimmered around them, the late afternoon light catching in the water. Lily took a shaky breath, then smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "You already know my answer," she whispered. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting there all along. Then she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "You don't have to build walls anymore," she said softly. He whispered back, "Not when you painted them into something beautiful." When they kissed, the world seemed to exhale. The wind softened. The river glimmered gold. For the first time in his life, Adrian Knight wasn't pretending. And for Lily Hart, the girl who had once spilled coffee on a stranger, love had found her in the most unexpected way. What began as a lie had become the truth. What started as a favor had turned into forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood hand in hand, watching the light fade across the water. Their story, born from desperation, shaped by loss, and sealed in love, had finally found its real beginning. And this time, there was no pretending, only promise. Some stories don't begin with love at first sight. They begin with chaos, with a spilled cup of coffee, an awkward apology, a deal that shouldn't have been made. They begin where logic ends, and something deeper begins to take root. Adrian Knight never believed in love. He believed in plans, in control, in building things that would never fall apart. He thought strength meant silence, that vulnerability was a kind of weakness. But then he met Lily Hart, and everything he thought he knew about life unraveled, one heartbeat at a time. For Lily, life had always been about trying to survive, trying to dream, trying to make beauty out of what was broken. She never expected that one act of kindness, one impossible request, would change her entire world. She didn't walk into Adrian's life to fix him. She walked in to help his mother smile. Just for a week. But sometimes a single week is all it takes for two souls to find each other. What began as a lie became something neither of them could let go of. It wasn't the grand gestures that changed them. It was the little things. The way he looked at her when she laughed. The way she listened when he spoke about his father. The way their silence slowly became comfortable, almost sacred. In pretending to love each other, they accidentally learned what love truly meant. Not perfection, not romance written in movies, but honesty, care, presence, the courage to stay, even when life hurts. Adrian used to believe love was a distraction. Now he knows it's the reason behind everything that matters. Lily once thought love belonged to people who had everything figured out. Now she knows it finds the one still learning how to hold on. They were two strangers bound by a promise to a dying woman. And yet, that lie gave birth to something real, something worth fighting for. Margaret Knight never got to see their real wedding. But maybe, somehow, she knew, maybe love like that doesn't end when life does. Maybe she left him the courage to keep loving, even when the story turned dark. Because love at its truest is never about pretending. It's about being seen completely. Flaws, fears, scars, and all. Adrian once built walls to protect himself from the pain of loss. But Lily didn't climb those walls. She simply opened a window and let the light in. And in that light, he found peace. Years later, people would see them together. A man and woman who seemed to fit effortlessly, who still laughed like they'd just met, who still held hands as if afraid to lose the feeling. They'd ask how they met. And sometimes Lily would smile and say, "Oh, it's a long story." But in her heart, she'd remember it all. The deal, the mansion, the laughter, the heartbreak. And how somewhere between pretending and believing, they found the real thing. The truth is, love doesn't always arrive dressed as destiny. Sometimes it sneaks in disguise as coincidence, a favor, a promise, a week that was never supposed to mean anything. But it meant everything. Because love isn't something you find. It's something you create, one honest moment at a time. And for Adrian and Lily, that single week turned into forever. They learned that real love doesn't ask you to be perfect. It just asks you to be, to show up, to feel, to forgive, to stay. And maybe that's what makes their story unforgettable. Not that it started with a lie, but that it ended with truth. The kind of truth that doesn't fade. The kind that lingers long after the last page, long after the final scene. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come disguised as endings, that what we think is temporary can become the most permanent thing in our hearts, and that maybe, just maybe, every person we meet has a reason for crossing our path. So if you ever find yourself lost, afraid, or uncertain, remember this. Love doesn't always come the way you expect it. But when it's real, you'll know, because it won't need pretending. It will simply be. And like Adrian and Lily, you'll look back one day and whisper to yourself, what started as a lie became my forever. And that was how a simple lie became a love story that outlasted the truth. Because sometimes The heart finds forever in the most unexpected places. If this story touched you even a little, don't leave just yet. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales TV for more stories that remind you what it means to feel, to hope, and to love. Until next time, this is Heartfelt Tales TV, where every story finds a heartbeat.